Hello, in this video, I'm going to show you how we can leverage the Layer 7 API management suite to protect an existing GraphQL server that you may have in your environment today. So to do so, log into your Layer 7 API developer portal, and we'll come over to the APIs screen. I'm going to add an API. And I'm going to jump down to API details, and we're going to give this a name. I'm going to call this the GQL proxy. This is going to be version 1. And the backend GraphQL server that we want to protect is located here. Let's assign it a EULA. Go to next. This is the URI that we want to listen on. So this is where the proxy will listen. And then we want to select the Arvada GraphQL security proxy template. So once we click add, we are prompted for some inputs. So the first one is our GraphQL schema. Let's grab our schema, paste it into this input field. And whether or not we want to enforce SSL, I do. Whether or not we want to enable introspection, yes. We can enforce a query depth. So this is how nested your GraphQL query will be. And for demo purposes, I'm going to select 2. And we support a query complexity enforcement value. And then which auth scheme we want to enforce. And so on the portal, I'm going to enforce the API key auth scheme. So let's go ahead and click create. So now we need to specify our permissions. So I'm going to make it public and open. Since we're enforcing that API key auth scheme, we need to map a client or an application to our API GraphQL proxy. So to do so, select apps. And then we have this client app 1 out there. So let's go ahead and modify him. We're going to drop down to the API management section. Notice we have our GraphQL proxy as an option. I'm going to add that. And so what we're doing here is we're mapping this client to this particular endpoint. And this will allow this client to consume that endpoint. So we'll hit save. Now for the client to be able to consume that endpoint, we're enforcing the API key auth scheme. So let's go ahead and grab that API key. Once we get that, we should be deployed now. So we should be able to bring up our graphical client, and we will hit our GraphQL proxy endpoint. Notice here, when I do an introspection query, it's doing a token check, and we don't have a token. So let's go ahead and add that API key. And this is the proxy enforcing this. So let's save that. Notice our introspection query went through. We're able to query. So let's try to break it via the query depth. So here, I'm going to go beyond the 2, the query depth of 2, and notice that the proxy is indeed failing me like it should be. Awesome. Also, this particular client that we're using, the API key that's associated with that API key that we're using, is a part of an organization that has an account plan that will not let me go beyond a 1 transaction per second limit. And notice once I start hitting it and I go beyond that 1 TPS average, it is indeed enforcing that account plan as we would expect it to. So we know that that is working as expected also. And we should be able to come over here, jump up to monitor, And we should see our, let's drop back on the filter, go to API, name, and we should see traffic for our GraphQL proxy as expected. And additionally, we can show that based on applications as well. So when we hit it a few times, being unauthorized versus our client one app. Get to see our latency and our error ratios as well. So this is how we can leverage the API developer portal and the Arvada GraphQL security proxy template to deploy a security proxy in front of your existing GraphQL servers and provide those protections that you would need. Thank you.